Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Hi, I am Sylvia Hayes, and you are watching Good News at Primetime. Today, we're going to have a great show. We're going to talk about the importance of a Black education. As you know, Morris Brown has gotten their accreditation back. After 20 years, they've lost it. They finally got it back. So we're celebrating that for them to have their accreditation back because it is so important. And this is education month, might as well say, because kids are graduating from high school, graduating from college, graduating from middle school and kindergarten. They're doing a whole lot of graduating this month and next month, of course. Majority of it, I would believe, is the month of May. And we got to say, Sunday is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers who stepmothers, grandmothers, step-in mothers, all those mothers, okay? Aunties who playing the role as a mother, sisters who's playing the role as a mother. You know, it might be a mother to your niece and nephew or something like that, taking a role, okay? Happy Mother's Day to you. Salute to you because that is a job. That is the most prestigious job that God has ever charged you with. The mothers, of course. And when you're stepping in and helping out, you're doing a great service to the community. So I salute you and say Happy Mother's Day to you. So we're going to be talking about the importance of education. It is so important that you get an education, and not just any education, a good education, okay? And for me, it's a Black education. It is important to get a Black education because you get so much more from a Black education than you do from a Black institution. Let me put it like that. Than you do from a white institution. It's totally different. Let me put it like that. It is different. You feel better. You soar better. I mean, it's different. And my power thought for today is learn all you can, everything you can about all you can. Everything you can, all you can, just learn, learn, learn. Because knowledge is power. Okay, just remember that knowledge is power. So learn everything you can about everything you can. Okay, so we're gonna bring on my co-host, Mr. Reginal Drummer, to help us talk about this fantastic subject of a Black education. Hey, Reggie, how are you doing today?
What's up there, Miss Sylvia, and what's up to our audience out there? When you bring up HBCUs, historical Black colleges and universities, and I got to think about my alma mater, Albany State. It used to be college down in Albany, Georgia, but it's Albany State University now. And kudos to Morris Brown because we played Morris Brown several times. And when you have the rivalries going, you don't understand the significance of Black institutions. We had rivalries, but
Mm-hmm.
when Morris Brown, I remember it quite well when they lost their accreditation. At first, I was like, "Well, go ahead," but as time passed by, I got more educated on the fact that Morris Brown, believe it or not, is one of the first institutions created by Black people
Mm.
for higher education. There are a lot of institutions created by others, like whether it be the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, a lot of organizations, but for Black folk to come together and say, you know what, we're going to create our own educational system, and that was Morris Brown. So Morris Brown really uh, elevated itself from a historical point uh, to me because I said, oh man, Black folk founded that. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
when I look up universities, especially Black Brown universities, there's another university that is founded by Black people. I didn't even know it. I was just down in Selma, Alabama. There's Selma University down in Selma, Alabama. But there's several universities were founded by Black people for the sole purpose of educating Black people. So when you look at that, and I think that's one of the cornerstones of building a culture or a civilization is your educational system, your platforms that you have to educate, move and motivate people. So that's where we are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And we have another guest, Mr. James Hudson. Hi, James. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How are you, sis?
I'm doing good. Thank you for
Hey, bro,
joining
Reggie.
us.
What's up there, Mr. James? It's good to have you
Man,
on board, my brother.
everything is good, man. I ain't got no complaints whatsoever.
That's what
Uh,
it's all about. Get in the
did you
short
go
line.
to did you go to
I'm
a historical
good
black
to see
college?
you all. Me? Who, me?
Yeah, James.
Talking about me? I
Yes.
ain't been to no college.
Oh, you didn't
No,
go
I
to
didn't go to college, no.
okay.
Hey, you went to somebody's homecoming. Where you from, James?
I'm originally from Atlanta, but I grew up in Gainesville, Georgia.
Okay, well, you know, if you're from Atlanta, it was hard to miss Morris Brown, Clark, and Morehouse homecomings. You know, so many times I would come up here. I went to Albany State, but I would come up here back then. It was Hunter Street, and
Oh, that's
that's where
right.
I learned. Yeah, I bit my teeth into black in, black institutions, even though I didn't know it. I didn't realize that I was going to a historically black college.
Uh-huh.
Because I went to a historically black elementary school. I went to a
Okay.
historically black junior high school and a
Yeah.
historically black high school. Elementary
Okay.
school was Coachman Park, which was named for Alice Coachman, Southside Junior High, and then Monroe High. As a matter of fact, I think everybody in my family actually have come through Monroe. My mother, my cousins, my brothers, even though it moved and shifted over the years. So I just thought it was a normal thing. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I know. So, James,
Well,
you went to black schools, or were your schools
yes,
integrated?
yes. I went to a predominantly black school until I got in the 11th grade. In the 11th grade, they closed our school down and shipped us to integrate a white school.
Wow.
And
Ah,
up until
okay.
then, if you ever look up the name Dr. E. Butler, that's the high school that I went to in Gainesville. It was named after a black doctor. And they closed it down, and it was a new school, probably opened about maybe Butler probably opened about 5 or 6 years before they closed it down. Built it from
Wow.
ground up to close it 6 years later.
Mm.
Yep. So at that point in time, I lost all interest in all activities. Only thing I wanted to do was get my diploma and get somewhere. I
What?
used to run. I used to run track. I was in the band. I played basketball. I was in the drama club. All of that. I didn't do nothing when I got out there but fight. And,
Right. Yeah.
Hey, say
I
that
tell you
again.
that
What?
too, because when I went to a black college, a junior college, and I was involved in all kinds of stuff, and you don't think about pride or anything like that in going to the school. You just go to it and enjoy it, you know. But now, as I look back, it was something to be proud of, because when you
yep,
go to a white school, it's different. Because when I went to the white school, I didn't participate in all that stuff like I did in the black school. You
that's
know,
right.
I felt better going to a black school. There was no stress. I was at ease. I was just with my people. All was gravy. It was good. You know, and to talk about school before it integrated, I went to it was a black school before it integrated, and the teachers there, they made you do your work. Okay, if you didn't do your homework, you got a whipping.
That's
Okay.
right.
So it was forced on you. Do your schoolwork. You got to get your education. It was forced on you to do that. And we had no problem in doing it. And we had all kinds of activities that lifted our spirits and all of that. But
That's right.
school integrated, it was different. I didn't participate in anything. You know, well, when I went to a white college, I didn't participate in anything. No, I just did my schoolwork. That's
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well,
it was
uh,
different. You
Yep.
know, even the teachers were different. In
Yes,
college,
they were.
yeah, in
right,
college, you learn about stuff. And this was the difference between going to a black college and a white college. And a black
right.
college, when they teach you
Well,
history, they teach you some black history. Okay.
That's it.
You learn
well,
about yourself, your culture, and all of that. When you go to a white school, they teach you white history. They don't teach you about blackness. You know, I don't remember them saying anything about anything black when I went to the white school. To be honest, I don't remember that, but I do remember that in my black college. And when I was in high school, the only thing they told us was black folks were in slavery. That was it for black history. Black people were in slavery. But they told us
Mm-hmm.
about Washington, and they told us about Christopher Columbus. They
Mm-hmm.
we learned about what's his name? The one who wrote the Independence.
Abraham Lincoln.
No, who wrote the
Oh,
Declaration?
Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
right.
They told us about him.
Well,
All those slave owners.
ah,
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
here's the thing. He wrote it in his declaration, all men are created equal. Yet and still, he owned about 175 slaves. You know, how are all men created equal and you owning those slaves? You
And
know,
he had a big.
Francis Scott Keys. They teach us about Francis Scott Keys, how he wrote the Star Spangled Banner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's supposed to be a good thing. Okay, wrote the Star Spangled Banner, but then Francis Scott, and it's talking about the land of the free and the brave. You know, that man owned slaves. And if you look at like the third stanza of that Star Spangled Banner, he did not like black people.
Mm,
You know, and he
True
owned
that.
slaves too. He owned
True.
slaves, and it's in his poem. You know, because it was a poem before they made it a song. You know,
Yes.
in there, the rap that he wanted, you know, for black people. He didn't have a good taste for them.
That's
So,
true.
but we learned about him.
yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, so
Well, I have to
we.
say this. Even though I grew up, I walked down the street to a black elementary school. I walked a couple more blocks down to a black uh, middle school and a black high school, and I was in the same city of a black college, Albany State. One of the things when I think about integration, when people started to come to the schools, uh, in black schools, it was a little bit different. We had about 15 white people come to our school when I was in elementary school. Well, the teachers told us to make sure that we looked out for them, we took care of them, all that type of stuff. As a matter of fact, I always remember there was only one disagreement between a black person and a white person when I was in elementary school, and that
Mm-hmm.
was in the sixth grade. When
Mm-hmm.
I got to middle school, it was the same thing. The teachers uh, brought to our attention to, look out, treat them fair, and all that. Even in high school, we had two white guys in our high school the whole time I was there. They never had an incident. They never had to be policed by the police, you know, escorted to school. None of that. Matter of fact, when I was in junior high school, Frankie Price was a white guy, and he ran with the brother. He never had to get an escort to come to school. He never had to get a pass or some type of indoctrination or something from the governor to say, hey, it's okay to go to school. Well, that was, and I didn't realize it then until I started to get and talk to people that were going through integration. Even in my hometown, I didn't know until maybe 20, 30 years later what they were going through across town, because I didn't have to go through that. And when I saw black people say, well, I was a good quarterback, and they told me ain't nobody black gonna be throwing the ball over here. I mean, you gotta think about that. Ain't no black queens over here. Ain't no black scholars over here. And I've never had to go through that. But I've known so many people. I had a girl, she said, Drummer, they told me that no black person would ever be the homecoming queen. I mean, it was just, and it's still like that in some places and spaces. So I didn't have a hard time doing integration. Plus, in my community, I saw black businesses. I walked down the street, it was a store. Yeah, it was a white business. Mr. PW was down the street, but I knew Mac Grocery, Griffin, Odom. Everybody I went to school with had a name at either a grocery store or something like that. We was just regular black folk. So I was just used to regular black folk doing that type stuff. The taxi cab driver, the policeman, the Dawsons, the trains. These were the policemen in my hometown.
Yeah.
Now I didn't know that they didn't have as much power as white policemen, but I was in a bubble. I was in a black bubble. I give that credit to my grandmother that protected us from a lot of things. We had crime and stuff like that, but it wasn't like now. Okay, when when I went to school, I saw. I was born on Martin Luther King's birthday, so I always saw what was happening in Alabama. I remember seeing George Wallace saying, "Segregation now, segregation forever." I remember seeing Lester Maddox ride backwards. He said he won't ride backwards on the bicycle to make sure that nobody black came to school with an axe handle. Well, I didn't see that personally in my space. So, the only limitations I had was the limitation I had. But when I talked to brothers, I had a brother in South Carolina. He said, man, with integration, they told him, you're going to sit down there, and if I need somebody to run the ball, you run that ball. But you would not throw a ball while you're in my program. And, that's got to be hard on a young black male coming up, or a cheerleader. So we don't want you got school spirit, and they tell you, no, you will not be a cheerleader. No, we don't want you in a band. No, I don't care how smart you are, it don't mean nothing. And that was some things that I learned later about white institutions and their treatment of black and brown people.
Yeah, I know they did a lot of that racial stuff in the schools. Well, let me put it like this. Before the schools actually integrated, I had a cousin and a couple of other people who went to the white school. One girl, she didn't have a problem, but the other one, man, they gave her all kinds of trouble at that school. Because they didn't want it. They called her names and picked her. Even the teacher was ugly to her, made her life miserable.
Yes.
And it's like they didn't want you there. But if you go to if a white person went to a black school, that was fine.
Right.
They got good treatment. And I guess it stems from way back in slavery time. They didn't want a black person to get an education because if they caught you reading, you get a beating, or they cut your thumbs off or something. They didn't want you to get an education.
Well, a lot of this is what the people were doing. In my family, they were not teaching us to hate the white kids that was coming to our schools.
Right.
In a lot of the white families, they was telling them that, hey, they're gonna take over. You ain't gonna be able to do nothing because they're gonna do everything that we used to do. So that created a bad America. It was like integration of schools was forced. You know, when you have to go escorted by the National Guard to go to school. I'm not talking about one day. I'm talking about all 180 plus days. You have to be escorted, whether it's in elementary school, junior high school, college. Well, even historical black colleges never made it a point to exclude white people.
Right.
Okay, but it was a fundamental process within the white culture to say, "Hey, y'all not coming here." And even when we had our own schools, it was just a thing where this was a behavior that was taught, and that behavior being taught because they could have told their kids, "Hey, some white people were saying, hey, some black kids gonna be integrating, make some of your friend. I didn't really need to go home and eat with you and break bread with you, but the educational system and even the religious system, because overlapping, some religious institutions to this day don't allow black and brown people to. They talk about heaven, but
That's true.
it's like they believe it's going to be a black heaven and a white heaven. So it's a lot of miseducation.
Yeah, and you know what? And they treat before the schools integrated, they treated them different too. The system itself, because I remember when I was in school, we got new books. I was all excited. We got new books for school, and then I opened the book up. There's a name in there. I'm going, who is this?
Right.
What had happened? They had taken the books from the white school and
That's
gave
right.
them to the black people, and then
Hand me downs.
white students get new books.
Right.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
so they did us wrong. They didn't want us. And another thing, you didn't have special ed. When I was coming, I don't remember special ed classes for anybody special, because we had a challenged person and he was in my class and he wasn't treated any different from anybody else. If he needed some help, some of the classmates might even help him, but he wasn't separated and made ashamed of what he was doing. But then look what they do when school integrated. They have these special ed
Right.
classes and they mark them. You're not as good as everybody else. You're a dummy and all of that. And
Right.
guess who's in there? A lot of the black people.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you bring up
That's
a good
right.
point. Now I'm gonna tell you this, not joking. Well, we had some special ed, but it wasn't from a standpoint of how they do it. As a matter of fact, we didn't see a separation of students until I was in probably the 8th grade. And the labels did start to come
Okay.
out. When the labels started to come out, you know, that would put, now back then we weren't doing medication, but I know now where if it's a young black male, he's put on Ritalin, some type of medication. Cause I had a teacher and I had one of my great nephews, and the teacher said he was disrupting the class. All he asked the teacher was, he finished all his work early. I mean, she couldn't teach him enough, but she was so weak that she said, he's disturbing my class. He's disturbing my class. And he's always wanting to do something extra. Now, you got to think about it. If that had been a white child, she probably would have made her or him the teacher's pet. You know what I'm saying? Or help move and motivate them to help the other kids. But and this is modern day. She felt threatened because he asked too many questions, and she wanted him on some type of medication, some type of and this is what has happened. Part of integration. That's why black institutions are important. And I'm gonna share this with you guys. I remember I had classmates when they first went to either Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, or whatever institution they went to. You know, white guys would come up to them and say, "What you doing here?" You're not playing football, not playing basketball, but I'm here to be an XYZ or this or that. Oh, okay. Well, my uncle was the this or the that. The white guy would be telling them that. You know,
Uh-huh.
I mean, if he was a lawyer, there was 5 generations of lawyers. If he was a doctor at Meharry up in Tennessee, there's 5 generations. So you had to be real strong. This is where black institutions come in because you got to be super strong to deal with the white institutions once you get there. Because you can get caught up.
Yep.
You get so caught up, you forget your culture, and you can be like a Clarence Thomas.
Yep. Well, I never had a chance to get caught up like that. But I've had one guy told me that, that after school integrated, he lost interest in school.
Oh
You know,
yeah, it's not hard.
because the way they treated him, and he dropped out. And and,
Mm-hmm.
and, and I think about it, it's a lot of black kids who drop out of school. And sometimes it is because of the way they're being treated in school. Because I know one girl who was being mistreated by the teachers and stuff, and she eventually dropped out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so that happened now at a predominantly black school. You have more graduates than you do at a white school. You have more males standing there, graduated, and they have a higher self-esteem. They have goals to reach. So they stand in there and they're reaching those goals and getting that education. Versus when you're going to a white school, you might drop out or you might quit. High school, that's what a lot of them drop out because they're not being mistreated. I had a teacher, yeah, an associate of mine, she taught in a public school and she quit teaching because she couldn't deal with the way those teachers were treating the black kids versus the white kids. They were
Wow.
more harsh on them and everything, and she couldn't deal with it. So she stopped teaching school. Now,
Yeah.
if a teacher quit school because of the mistreatment of black kids, what do you think the black kids gonna do?
Yeah.
They're gonna be
Mm.
dropping out too. And then they talk about black people robbing banks and stealing and stuff like that, but then you don't give them a fair chance to get an education. They may
Well,
want that education, and when they drop out because you're mistreating them, then they have to survive, and sometimes they turn to crime. So I think it's the education institution that causes some of these people to turn to crime because they force them out. And some people don't have that mentality. I got to stick it out. I'm not going to listen to what they say. Some of them don't have that mentality.
yeah.
So
Well,
when
once again, and this comes back to the family. And I got to put it. I got to make it clear. I come from a strong family. I
yeah,
think if I went to a white school, I would have been strong and black. Okay. If you come from and not saying families are weak, but I can think about whether it be my grandmother, my granddaddy, my mother, my dad, and how they interacted amongst white people. See, if you are amongst people that are prejudiced, they got built-in fears about you. I think the first time I realized prejudice was when I got into the military because I had never been around a large group of white people. Okay.
mm-hmm.
And what white people have a tendency to do is become comfortable with what they're used to. So I went through some transitions, and I was 19, 20 years old. I didn't let white people call me Reggie
Mm-hmm.
because they were said it was kind of demeaning in the way they said it, at least the way that I thought they said. You see what I'm saying? Uh, so I made white people call me drunk, and I was the only black person in my division. I spent a lot of time not laughing, not smiling, all because I was trying to. And I went through a period like that of being the hard black guy. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want to be stepping, fetching. I didn't want to be none of that. And we go through those things based on the responses that white people give us, or the responses that we think white people are doing. When I remember a brother wouldn't eat me chicken because he said, I don't want white people to think that's all we do is eat chicken and watermelon. See, these are the indoctrinated things that are inside our head. Now, even though those white people weren't doing that, this was in the back of my mind. I had to grow up out of that. And what helped me was coming from a strong black background.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I started to do research, whether I was dealing with Hebrew Israelites, Nation of Islam, all this stuff, sometimes I would overly react when I saw white people and how they will look at certain things. Even if a white person laughs at me, I'm trying to figure out why you laughing. What's so funny? Okay. I mean, these are things that we've learned. I mean, and this is me personally, and I had to learn to not always look at white people as being the governing structure for my behavior. Okay, because I'm reacting to what I think white people think. And at some point, I said, man, I got to go back to the time where I wouldn't even think about white people and what they thought about me. Those type of things. Because the average white person really might not think about you, but we have to think about them. Case in point, I had not to go all over the place, but I remember asking some brothers one time about religion. And I had 3 white guys, about 6 brothers. Well, none of the white guys brought up black people when it came down to religion. But all the brothers, I had a Hebrew Israelite brother, a Nation of Islam brother, a Christian brother, and even a Catholic brother that had to bring up white people. So a lot of this has to do with how we were educated here in America. And we have to really look at that, pull ourselves back, and take a bigger, broader snapshot of what's really happening. And sometimes we can be, there are some things that white people do that are just treacherous. Like when they tell you you're a good quarterback, you can blow the trombone, you can cheerleader, you're smart. They tell you, I don't care what you do, you'll always be number 2 here.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're going to be like that too. But as far as education, I know even when you get to college, sometimes those teachers, some teachers, there are a couple of them there who don't want you to learn still. Because I am an example of that. Now, I probably told you this before. I made a on the road one time, the president list one time, I made the dean list one time. So that's telling you I'm not exactly dumb. But I had this teacher at this white college. When I took a test in there, when I came out of there, I was so proud of myself because I knew I had aced that test. When I got it, I failed.
Wow.
When he went over the answers, what he said was the answers. That's what it looked like that was on my paper, but he had it marked wrong. When I questioned him about it, he said those weren't the right answers. But then when I compared my paper to a white girl's paper, we had the same answers. Mine was wrong and hers was right. So you have that. And I didn't finish college because the classes I needed was under that man.
Wow.
I went 4 years of college. Actually 4.5 if you count summer stock, but I did not get a degree. Fortunately, I was a theater major, and what I wanted to do didn't require a degree. It required talent, So, but that man did that to me, and it was a hurtful thing. I didn't know that I could go higher ground to report this and get it fixed. I didn't know that. He did it to me. What could I do? So there are teachers who are like that. My daughter, when she was in elementary school, her teacher, who was an old white man, used to call her names. And she
Okay.
would come home and tell me about it. I reported it to the school, and they said he didn't mean that. She must have misunderstood him. But one day she came home and told me he poked her with an umbrella.
Wow.
I went to the police and had that man arrested. And he was getting ready to retire. I was trying to take his retirement. I don't
Wow.
know what happened to it after that, but fortunately, I was trying to let the law do it rather than me, because I would have been all over that man.
Wow.
Because those things do happen. You're fortunate that you didn't have that to happen to you. But
Oh,
there is a lot of kids do that.
oh,
One guy told me he dropped out of school because of his teachers. It wasn't there. You're supposed to be motivated. When you go into a black school, you are motivated to do good. I mean,
yeah.
look what Camilla Harris, or whatever her name is, she
Ah,
went to black school. Our former mayor went to a
quote
black
unquote.
school. Huh?
Right. Quote unquote. She went to Howard.
Yeah. And look at the other leaders. They went to black schools, and it motivated them, and they knew they could do it. Versus you going to a white school, going to say you get an education, get a job. Black education, you get an education, and you become entrepreneurs and CEOs. Okay.
Right.
That's the mentality of it. So you need that. You don't need anybody to tell you you can't do this.
Right.
You're not supposed to own a business. And what really pisses me off, when a
Whoa.
black person do have a business that's successful, some white person trying to take it from them. They don't want you to
Well,
succeed.
yeah.
They,
Well, I got it. I was going to ask Brother James this, because Brother James, you brought up earlier, you said that you had some talent, but when you got into an integrated platform, those talents were suppressed. You weren't even
True.
motivated to do anything. I mean,
No, I wasn't.
so what was some of the skill sets you have, and what kind of got you to the point where you didn't want to do it? That's those are the schools.
Well, for one thing is when they closed the predominantly black schools down, I thought that was unjust. I used to write. I used to write plays and things of that nature. The same high school that Deshaun Watson graduated from, I
Mm,
was one of the trailblazers that fought to get black history in that school, Gainesville High. That's where he
wow.
graduated from. The same school that A.J. Johnson, the linebacker for the Denver Broncos, graduated from. I was one of the
Okay.
trailblazers to fight to get black history in that school. That's what my mindset was. It was also on keeping my grades up that I could graduate, but I could care less about the curriculums. I didn't. I graduated back then. They used to have units, and you needed 20 units to graduate. I
Okay.
graduated with 22 and a half units. So my mindset was keep yourself together to graduate, but make way for those that's coming after you. So I didn't care nothing about all that extracurricular band and track and writing and all. No, my mindset was completely gone away from that. It was paving the way for those coming after me, that they wouldn't have to suffer through the things that I had to suffer through. As a child in Gainesville, Georgia, I've been called the N word to my face.
Wow.
I faced all of that as a 10, 11-year-old child.
Mm,
yeah.
Cutting grass for the summer to make money. The lady told me, you can cut my grass, but I don't allow my children to play with the ends.
whoa.
Mm.
I didn't let that,
But,
it's
yeah.
hard to, it's hard to
Your, your,
take. It's hard to take.
your, your mental fortitude. Well, and I want to put this out. There's a movie out on Netflix called Master. It's a powerful movie. It's about a black student going to an all white, a majority white school, and it's about a black professional woman being in position
Excuse me.
at an all majority white institution. And in there's a lot of underlying issues, what we call slight racism, that's always on point. I mean, see, some racism when they call you the N word, when they tell you, hey, you need to get a janitorial job because ain't nobody in your family ever did nothing other than clean houses and stuff like that. So here you are trying to be this and try to do that. Figure out how to clean my house. Those are blatant. That's right in your face. But when it comes down to subtle things that they do, and it's hard for white people sometimes to admit the subtle racisms that they do. And this is why it's important, even sometimes at black institutions, because some black folk and black teachers now don't realize what they're doing. Now, in this movie, there are so many hidden racial overtones. We call them racial undertones or overtones. This is where people are just doing things blatantly, but it's not like in your face where they hanging you, calling you the N-word, insulting you. They do it so subtle that you don't even know you've been a victim of racism in educational institution. It happens on the job. But the movie is called Master. It's on Netflix. But one of the things, this is why it's important within the family. If you got a weak family structure, one of the things that, like I said, I didn't experience hard racism until I went in the military. And I remember one time in the Navy, you would be, when you first come to the ship, they call it paying your dues. So you got to work in the galley, you got to serve food and all this stuff. Well, this white guy out of New York threw the tray in where I was washing. Now, it might not have been a racial act, but he just, because that's the first time somebody just took advantage of, made me feel like I was less than anything. Now, he threw the tray, so I threw the tray back at it. Now, if you're familiar with the familiar process, I was like an E3 and he was an E4. So they wrote me up for disrespecting a petty officer. There's always some rules, not all kind of stuff. Now, I was blessed because that one incident could have been a mark on me, immediately. And I was the only black person in the division, about 60 people. But I can't even think of the guy. He came, he said, well, drummers, he pretty much does what we say, never had a problem, yada, 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 yada. One incident. So they didn't take my rank. They just suspended me to the ship for 30 days. Now, think about that. That can cause a problem with the person, especially a black person. Because a lot of the brothers that was on the ship had gone through some of the same things. And they had a division called the deck division. And brothers would come to the ship ready to do whatever. And they would lose their accreditation in the mess hall. Because that's where you learn how to respect, unquote, unquote, white people. And especially white brothers from the North, Philly. I found out some of the hardest, most racist people were from Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. The white guys out of Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, they were used to us. They were less racist than the white guys from the North. And, so these are things that happen. And if you're not strong, and you got to have some good faith, your family values have to be strong, because I didn't want to come home and not get kicked out of the military. But some guys said, blanket, I'm not taking this. But there were incidents of subtle racism, and I was able to identify them later. But because I had a strong black foundation, you know what I'm saying? A lot of those things didn't affect me as much.
But see, the thing is, some people, they don't know, like kids, they don't know to come back and tell their parents that something was going on in school. They just try to deal with it
Right.
themselves. They don't know. No, so that's where you might say you have to have a strong family. You might be strong within your niche, but then when you go outside and something is happening, you don't necessarily, the kids don't know to tell all the time. They just deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they just deal it with, I mean, just like parents don't know stuff is going on and their child commits suicide. They didn't know to tell their parents what was going on. They
Right.
just dealt with it and it just happened. And it does happen. And talking about racism, I was just reading an article where this teacher, white teacher in New York, he took his kid to a plantation or cotton field or something to pick cotton, teaching them Black history. Okay, so he
Wow.
took, these are seventh graders. Majority of the seventh graders were Black. The Black ones, he put handcuffs and shackles on them, and they had them picking cotton and called him massa. you know. And this,
Mm-hmm.
I just read this. This just happened. Call him massive,
Right.
And then the thing is, this critical race theory thing, they be talking about, we don't want our children to be ashamed that they're white. But what about them putting all these feelings in the Black people to have them feeling some kind of way for being Black? You make them feel like they're not good enough, or you try to treat them like they're not equal to Black people, and they always bringing up, you're Black, you're not better than us or equal to us. They always try to make the Black
Right.
people feel worse, but yet still they don't want this critical the race theory, because they don't want their children to be ashamed of being white. Why would they be ashamed? Why do you continue to try to dominate Black people? If you don't want it out there, why you continue to do it? And they continue. That's why they're shooting so many people.
Yeah.
They're always shooting Black people. Black people don't get the jobs they need. They discriminate on the jobs. They discriminate on the education, everything. But yet still, they don't want the white people to feel like they're less.
Well,
They have an inferiority
well,
complex, and
yeah.
like
Well, I think it's
they
critical.
dominate. They take, even in slavery time, Black people invented stuff and the white people took it. I mean,
Right.
because they want to have the power.
Yeah. Well, it's critical. It's critical that we as a people recognize what's going on, whether it's blatant racism or subtle. When we saw the Supreme Court Justice nomination, Ms. Jackson, there was a lot of subtle racism. Okay, they just couldn't come out and call her the N-word. They just couldn't call her uppity Black bee or whatever. But they did it subtle. Now, one of the things that's happening now, because we recognize different things, because sometimes, even as a Black person, I had to question myself to see, was I so conditioned that I didn't see racial situation. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because you go somewhere and it's so subtle, you won't even see it. But I know you want to get in there, James. These people can do something so subtle that you don't even realize you've been hoodwinked and bamboozled. This is how critical the underlying issue of education in whites and Blacks, and especially the subtle racism. But I know you've seen it, James.
Yes. Are you all familiar with the term porch monkey?
I've somewhat heard that before.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I ask you that because I want to make a statement behind it. Everything that we as a nation, I'm talking about the Black people, have invented, come up with, put in place, and everything, they've come back behind us and taken it and twisted it. I'm going to tell you about the term porch monkey, where it come from. It started back in slavery. They call black people porch monkeys nowadays. But the way the term got started, when the young black children was going to the fields to work, the white children was up on the porch, swinging on swings, swinging around the poles that were holding the porch up, and the young black children would say to each other, "Look at those porch monkeys." That's where the term originated from. So now they taking the term and twisting
Wow.
it and call us that when everything that black people can't even have attitudes no more. They're trying to take our attitudes. Everything that we present to the world, to the public, they come back and copy it. And they try to use it against us. I've never questioned my militant. I never have, because I know what's in my heart. Do I love God? Yes, I do. And I despise and hate evil. And they are evil, evil people. They will cut their own mother's throat for $1. And we have taken on, some of us have taken on their ways. You never heard about in the old days a black child hurting their mom until integration came about. And we got over there and got caught up in their mess. Right. Their mess. Now you hear about it all the time. A black child shooting big mama. You don't hear about that. You don't hurt big mama.
Killing his mama? No. Well, now you bring up another point. We can look at education and we can look at religion. Matter of fact, it's probably still there. If you ever get in Atlanta, and it's on Columbia Drive. Now, Avondale Estate is known for Mr. Avondale. He owned a bunch of slaves.
Didn't know
Before
that.
they built the Walmart, there's a shrine over there. And the shrine is built for 12 of his slaves. Mr. Avondale, he really believed this. He said, I'm going to heaven, but I just built a heaven for my slaves. And it was right there on Memorial Drive up there by Columbia. It used to be the Avondale Mall. Now, again,
I remember that.
Recognize, it might be still, it's probably still there. And I got to make it a point to go by there and take some pictures and whatnot. But I'm thinking it's still there. But going back to subtle and blatant racism. Now one of the importance of black institutions, because one of the reasons Morris Brown lost their accreditation, the same day that Morris Brown was going through that situation, there's a college in Marietta, the Atlanta Chiropractic College. They was about to lose their accreditation too. I always remember. Well, they kept theirs, but Morris Brown lost theirs. One of the reasons Morris Brown lost their accreditation was because they were founded by black people. And they had to put a mark on them to make sure that you remember your place.
Yes. Bill
Anytime
Cosby.
you do anything, there's some subtle things. There's some subtle things that people say, you know what? We got to remind them of their place. And if you over 40 or 50 years old, you already know these things. But the younger generation come up, they might not really realize that. Even the use of the N-word, how we treat our, I'm pretty sure none of us, we might have said one thing towards our parents, but we weren't like some of the young people today. I mean, you could not catch me disrespecting my mother, my grandmother, or any elder person in my neighborhood. That was stuff we were taught.
That's right.
Yeah. Now I see cross and cut cross Miss Lily's yard every now and then, but I didn't make it a habit. And if she caught me, guess what? I had to get, but she I don't care if she threw a water bottle at me, a whip or whatever. It is what it is. But we come from a heritage of people that respect our elders.
That's right.
In all facets, yes.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. Okay, so like they say, when they're talking about Black History Month and stuff like that, why don't y'all forget about that? That was history. Leave that behind. I know some of you have heard that before. Just forget about that. That was history. But yet and still, they try to treat you like you were living way back then. So how can you forget about history if you keep reliving it and treating us like you're reliving it? And then too, what I want to say is, Joe Biden made Juneteenth a national holiday last year, right? And guess what? They
Right.
want us to forget about it, but Arkansas, they were doing a Juneteenth thing, and guess who were on the poster? Three white people. 3 white people sponsoring a Juneteenth
Oh
thing.
yeah, I saw that.
They're gonna make it their business to make money off these Black people, and they're suffering when they keep saying, "Forget about the history." We're gonna celebrate your freedom. We're gonna make some money off of it.
They've always done it in every movement we've had. SCLC is sponsored by Black people. Integration, as quiet as it kept. Dr. King, Malcolm X, and the brother from the Black Panthers back during the day, all 3 of them got killed because they were getting ready to get united. Not only that, but Sam Cooke also got killed because he was getting ready to sponsor them. He said, "We taking all the white people out of the organization." Go ahead. What is it, Reggie? Oh, and he had told them.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening. You don't. Go ahead.
He said, "We're removing all the white people out of the organizations, and I'm going to sponsor you all with my money." And he had it to do too. It wasn't that woman in the hotel that killed Sam Cooke. It sure wasn't. It wasn't James Earl Ray that killed Dr. King. No, it wasn't. It wasn't the black fellas in the theater that killed Malcolm X. All this was done by the FBI, government, officials, whatsoever. Malcolm X, when they finally did an autopsy on his body, bullets hit him coming from up over his head. The brothers they said shot him was down on the floor, pointing up, but the bullets hit him like this, coming downward.
Right.
They are treacherous. And I don't care for them. I'm sorry. I mean, that's what it is. I never have, and I never will.
Yep. That's understandable. I mean, because they don't want you to have anything. Because, I mean, you look at Bill Cosby. Why did all those people come out of the woodwork all these years back to prosecute him? You know why? Because he was getting ready to buy a network. They didn't want him to own that network. That's why they did it. The same thing with this other guy. He had to sue Comcast. What is his name? I can't even think. He's a comedian.
I know you talking about because used to be a comedian. Yeah. Well, one of the things.
He still have a talk show, but he had to sue in order to get his networks. And then this company in California now,
he's still in court.
Black Television Network, man. They all over him trying to discourage him because he would have been the largest black network, around. They don't want him to do that because he had black power and black people behind him, and they're gonna make sure, that he's not doing it. So they always come up with stuff to try to keep you down.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
So it's important that you get your education and you know what's going on. And just don't sleep.
Don't sleep on them. That's right. Don't sleep on them.
That's true.
Do not sleep on them.
Don't sleep.
Because a lot of people do sleep. They say it ain't like it used to be. Yeah, yeah, that's what you think. They get slicker with it now, even with the red lining. They get slicker with it.
Yeah.
People taking people houses.
As people that just got Roe versus Wade.
Exactly. Yeah,
What
Roe,
about it?
We
Roe
asked the
versus Wade.
people that just had Roe versus Wade overturned.
Talk about it.
Well,
So
and I have
it,
to
it
say
was
this:
over. They,
Ronald Reagan said this: "Freedom ain't free.
That's true. It's a cost. It is a
yep.
price to be paid.
You have to fight. You have to fight for freedom every day, every generation, and that's where the educational system, which starts at your home, we have to start teaching.
Mhm.
For one thing, Jewish people don't rely on public education to direct them and tell them about Jewish history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
they do it themselves. So from our vantage point, and you can't buy into a Jewish institution talking about you're gonna be part of the institution that's gonna help these Jewish people to become better Jewish people. Now, black and brown people have to adopt that same philosophy. We have to teach and we have to vet the people that come in and teach and educate our people in order for us to be better.
You got to remember, as Sylvia said earlier, history, his story. The Jews teach their children his story. We
Mhm.
allow our children to go to school to get their story. Later on, we come back and try to teach our
Ooh,
story. But
Yeah.
from
too
a
late.
infant up, other cultures are learning about their own story. And when we start learn to that we need to start coming together as a nation, we are not the minorities. We are the majorities. But we're so divided and so bickering against one another. A house divided shall not stand or will not stand. That what make us look so small because James don't want to help Reginald get up, and Reginald don't want to help James get up. Reginald trying to get up instead of me taking Reginald and grabbing him by the heel of his feet and pushing him. I grab him by the bottom of his pant leg, trying to pull him back down. You know, and that's a cycle. It's a cycle that they have implanted in our minds that we got to continue fighting against one another while they over there plotting how they can get more of our culture in their land.
Mhm.
His story.
Yep. It is his story, and you need to know your history because they teach you stuff, but it's not the whole truth. They
No,
teach you the stuff that make them look good.
that's right.
Okay, that's the problem. Whatever makes them look good, that's what they teach, and we shouldn't accept that. We need to go and do our own study and learn for ourselves because it's not good. Even when they talk about the Indians, they depict the Indians as being savages and stuff, but they don't say anything about how they came over and killed the Indians, took their land, and took their food away, and all of that kind of stuff. But whatever
Mm-hmm.
makes them look good, that's what they're gonna say. Or
That's it.
whatever they should it shouldn't be. And it's time for us to go. But I just want to say that you got to learn all you can about everything you can. Don't let
Yes.
somebody else tell you what your history is. You need to learn for yourself because you're gonna see there's a whole lot of deep rooted secrets in there that's not being told. You're
So
only
true.
getting the surface of stuff. You need to get deep down in and know what is going on, what has happened in our history and everything. We need to know. And so it is time for us to go, but I just want to say, know your history. Learn for yourself. Learn for yourself because it is so important that we get a black education. Because when you get that black education, you're gonna feel good. Versus you're gonna have that drive to go do more, climb higher, higher. Versus being in a white institution, it's like, oh, I gotta pass, class and you're studying more about that than where you're going to the next step. And they sometimes they're gonna down you and make you feel bad about trying to learn, trying to be smart, because I know sometimes black people they have to succeed because they tell you you got to act white. You got to act white in order for you to get somewhere. You're gonna be a cheerleader. You got to act white to try to get that cheerleading position. No, be black. Love yourself. Love your culture. You don't have to wear your hair straight. That's not the way you were born. Be proud of who you are and just go for it. Okay, get that education. Go. Be proud of who you are. That's what I gotta say. Be proud of who you are. And so until then, we're gonna say goodbye because we love our history. We know it's important to get a black education because it will make you strive. You won't see as many people on the street doing things, but being crooked. If they get that education, the white people just I'm not down in white people or anything like that because everybody's not like that. But you got some people who will really put you down and make you feel bad about yourself, make you feel like you're stupid and you can't succeed. And they will tell you, don't you go for this engineering job. You need to do something like electricity or find you just a job. I can't even think of the word now. A job just to be a job. Co-op or something, learn how to do mechanics. Don't learn how to be a CEO. That's what they want you to do. No, you step higher than that. Believe in yourself and know that you can do it. Get that education. And one of the things I just want to say before we go off the air, they had this thing in Mississippi where the white institutions would get more money than the black institutions. And they had a lawsuit. It's called the Ayers case or something like that. Named after, what's the name? Jack Ayers or some Ayers man. Okay, look it up. Where they won the case and they had to give these black institutions money, so they can do better in school too. Because even the finances, they still try to give the black people less. And it did happen. They did get education. They got the money, and then there was one condition: they had to have 10% white people, well, non-black. Let's put it like this: in order for them to control the money that they gave them, you have to have 10% of non-black people in your institution. Okay, and it was one white lady who went to a predominantly black school and bragged about she could get a free education because she's a minority. Something like that kind of want to tick you off. She's a minority, so she could get a free education. But yet and still, if you go to a white school and you being a minority, you ain't getting that. So it's all backwards. They don't want you to get the education you want. But get your education. And until next week, we're going to see you. Don't forget to vote. Early voting is started. And we're going to talk about politics next week. And so until next week, y'all have a good day. Good evening, shall I say.